Well, it turns out that plants do have other pigments they can use. We call them accessory pigments, and they're going to help absorb colors that are not absorbed normally by the chlorophylls. So one big group of the accessory pigments are known as the carotenoids. If you notice, the word carrot is right in here. Turns out that carrots get their orange color from the carotenoids. Okay? They actually look orange or yellow. Now, carotenoids are really good at absorbing from about 400. So if we were to look at this, it's about here, all the way through 530, which is somewhere around about here. So in the purple, blue, and blue-green sections, carotenoids are pretty good. Okay. Now, if you remember with the chlorophylls, you also absorb kind of in this section over here. Okay. So really, by using carotenoids combined with chlorophylls, we basically are able to absorb this section in here, right? We're able to absorb a little bit in here with the chlorophylls and also with the carotenoids. Okay, so all the way over here, but we still are basically losing this energy. This energy here is lost, this light, or we could say it's reflected. Okay, so again, whatever color is not absorbed is reflected. Now, it turns out what this really means is that there's no real pigment that absorbs well between about 530 to 570. So this section right here. And it turns out this is the reason why plants look green or yellow, because they don't have any pigments that are good at absorbing in this range, so they reflect green light. They reflect green yellow. Okay, the rest of the colors they're pretty good at absorbing, so they get that energy, but not so much in the green section. Okay, so now that we know what pigments are and we know what they're able to do, the next thing is, where are they? Okay, in other words, when we look at a plant, where are the pigments actually hiding? Well, it turns out if you're talking about a eukaryote, so in this case a plant or even an algae, okay, it turns out that the pigments are going to be hiding out in the chloroplast. We know about the chloroplast. It's the organelle where photosynthesis takes place, and specifically the pigments will be hiding in the thylakoid of the chloroplast, which is also known as the inner membrane. Okay, and the pigments themselves are embedded in the integral proteins of the thylakoid. The thylakoid is that inner membrane, and integral protein is just a protein that is part of that membrane. Now, pigments are embedded in the proteins, and the proteins are stuck in the membrane. So these particular proteins here have a special name. They're called photosystems, because they essentially look like a little protein, okay, and then stuck in them you have your pigments. Okay, so you can kind of think of a photosystem as like a solar panel. It's a protein that essentially arranges the pigments in a nice little array that will allow them to collect sunlight as it hits the protein. Okay, now in prokaryotes it's a little bit different. Okay, prokaryotes do not have membrane organelles. So even though using a chloroplast would be amazing, they can't. They don't have chloroplasts. So instead, the same pigments, or at least similar pigments, will be embedded in the cell membrane. So when you look at your prokaryote cell, right, and you might even have a little cell wall here, right, you've got your DNA kind of floating around. What you'll see is along the edge around the cell membrane, it's actually not in, it needs to be in the cell membrane, like so, these pigments, right, will absorb light if this is a photosynthetic bacteria or prokaryote. So it's in their cell membrane as opposed to the membrane of a chloroplast.